Good morning. Today is Sunday, August 23rd, and we'll be looking at the 16th chapter of the Gospel of John. In the 16th chapter, we're continuing the same set of passages where Jesus is teaching his disciples. There's not action in this. There's not narration. It's more Jesus saying things to his disciples and his disciples saying things back to him. And so we begin in the same paragraph that ended in chapter 15 when Jesus in John's Gospel mentions the advocate, which we would call sometimes the Holy Spirit, the Spirit in John's Gospel is called the Spirit, or for the Greek word, the Paraclete. To be the understanding of what the Spirit is for John's Gospel and John's audience as well. So he describes the work of the Spirit, and it's the similar work in all four Gospels that we see, because the disciples are going to be put on trial. The believers, the followers, not just the 12, but all those who followed Jesus will be eventually put on trial. And through that trial, they are taught, and if you'll remember from the earlier Gospels, don't practice what you're going to say on trial, because the Holy Spirit will give you words. That's kind of where it is in the Synoptics. And in John's Gospel, he expands on that idea a lot more and repeats. It sort of says the same idea in several different ways, that the Holy Spirit will give you words. And so what we say was he will take what is mine and declare it to you. So that's in 14. Let me just reference it specifically. So they said that the Spirit, and this is in 13, when the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all truth, for he will not speak on his own, but will speak whatever he hears, and he will declare to you the things that are to come. He will glorify me, because he will take what is mine and declare it to you. So that's how Jesus is explaining to them that what I have and what I've brought here on earth will be then declared to you. And so that's the apostles, and they carry that Spirit into the book of Acts. We'll see that after, if you continue reading beyond John, you'll see the book of Acts, and you'll see the same characters from Jesus stories without Jesus in the Acts of the Apostles. And so the Spirit will give you the words. And this, like I said, this idea is said in different ways, but it's said in all four Gospels, that don't practice or rehearse what you're going to say when you're on trial. Rely on the Spirit to give you the words. This is very comforting words. Again, more words of comfort from Jesus. And so the resurrection is embedded in the middle of chapter 16 as well, when he says, in a little while, you will no longer see me. And again, in a little while, you will see me. Then some of his disciples said to one another, what does he mean by saying to us? And they repeat what he's just said. And so it's said several times. And so he says, they say, what does he mean by that? And they said, does he mean this? Does he mean by this a little while? We do not know what he's talking about. And Jesus knew that they wanted to ask him. So he said to them, are you still discussing among yourselves what I meant when I said? And it repeats for the third time, this, in a little while, you will no longer see me. And again, in a little while, you will see me. Very truly, I tell you, you will weep and mourn, but the world will rejoice. You will have pain, but your pain will turn into joy. And what he's talking about there is this idea that he's going to be taken by the authorities, he's going to be crucified, he's going to die and be buried, and then rise again, and then ascend. So in a little while, you will no longer see me, because I'll be in the grave. And then you will see me, because I'll be risen. But then you will no longer see me again. He doesn't say that extension part, but that's essentially what he means. And you will have to carry on the mission without me in the body here. So it's very confusing, and it's, like I said, it's repeated several times. But he says, you will have weeping, you will have sorrow, and then you will have joy. And your joy will be complete. And then he imparts peace on them again. And he says that I think what he's talking about when he talks about, in our translation, they use the phrase figures of speech. You are talking plainly with us, Lord, no longer using figures of speech. Maybe parables or stories are outside of, or maybe more in John's gospel, is similes. I am the vine, I am the good shepherd. He compares himself to different things to explain who he is and where he's coming from. And so he says that I'm now speaking plainly with you. And the disciples say, yes, Lord, you're now speaking plainly with us. So that's what gives them more comfort. And then he says, they say, we believe. And he says, I know, but you're going to be scattered. There will be a time where you'll be scattered, each one to your home. And I think he's talking about at his arrest, impending trial, and execution. They're going to scatter out of fear. Peter denies him, and the disciples disappear, except for maybe some in the other gospels, the one whom Jesus loved that was at the crucifixion. But he says from the cross, woman, this is your son. It's the only one we have evidence of that was even there at all, because there's listed in the Gospels, all four of them, that the disciples were not there at the crucifixion because they were afraid. And then they were gathered in the upper room to regroup, to see what happened, to be afraid. And that's when Jesus appeared to them at one point. So he says, yet, he's like, you will all leave me alone. And he puts in there, yet I'm not alone because I'm with the Father, but you guys will abandon me. They basically will abandon Jesus. And he's predicting this in chapter 16, which hasn't happened yet, but he was predicting it in chapter 16, getting ready for the passion, getting ready, setting the groundwork for the passion. And he says, I have said this to you so that in me you may have peace. In the world you face persecution, but take courage. I have conquered the world. And this is what makes me want to follow Jesus. It's not a pie in the sky kind of theology at all. It's not if you just find Jesus, everything will be okay. All your problems will get solved. No. Trust in the one who's conquered the world. It's a place to put your trust. It's not a magical wand, but it's a place to put your trust. It's about relationship. And it's about meaning and identity and who you are and how God sees you. And the world's going to say one thing about you. And I don't mean the world, like not the earth, the planet, but the society, the naysayers, the critics, the scribes, and the elders, and the chief priests, whoever it is. I mean, for Jesus, it was them. The Romans, whoever it is that defines who you are, it is no longer. It's negated, Jesus says, by who Jesus is. I have conquered the world. I have conquered the world. So take that good word with you. We'll be a little bit more into the teaching for the disciples in chapter 17. But then we get closer to the passion coming up. So have a beautiful day.